Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Edan Maybon of LightCycleAstrology.com. Welcome back to the channel, friends. So yesterday was the big eclipse that came through at the end of Aries, and I don't know about you, but I definitely felt kind of a heaviness just the whole day long. It was just this kind of heavy, dark cloud kind of a feeling, and nothing really bad happened as far as, in my life personally, but it just had this really heavy quality to it. So this is coming on the heels of this now that we have a Sun square Pluto, which is what we're going to talk about today. Now, of course, what is also happening is Mercury is preparing to turn retrograde today as well. So normally what I do is I make a video for Friday that leads into the weekend, but because the astrology is really just right on top of each other right now after the eclipse coming through Wednesday or Thursday morning, as it were, depending on where you were in the world, the sun moves immediately into the sign of Taurus, begins making that square to Pluto. Mercury is basically conjunct Uranus right now and prepares to station retrograde. So I thought what we could do is I thought I would make some content for Thursday in place of Friday's content that can be for the weekend content ahead. And then on Monday, we'll dive a little bit deeper into that Mercury retrograde cycle that's about to hit us. So that's the plan for today. Now, of course, before we jump into today's content, don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. As like, for instance, this video is coming a day early instead of on Friday when it normally would. And you can always reach out to me at lightcycleastrology.com if you ever want to send me any private messages or inquire about getting a consultation from me. I am trying to build up my my clientele, as it were, over the next year ahead in hopes of building up this astrology client business to the point where maybe I can take some time off of work and do more what's in line with my passion, which is, of course, astrology and helping people through understanding this miraculous divination that we all enjoy so much and get so much philosophical understanding from. So that's the goal for me as it stands in particular with this channel. So yeah, if you ever want to reach out to me and get any of my astrology services personally, that's a good place to do it, lightcycleastrology.com. Okay, guys, thanks so much for letting me plug that. Now, let's go ahead and pull up the real-time clock, and we'll take a look at some of the astrology that is leading us into the weekend here. I have extracted out most of the planets, except for the ones that I feel like are really the ones that are speaking pretty loudly right now. So basically, we have the sun has recently entered into the sign of Taurus, of course, which just happened about 3 hours after the eclipse yesterday. And so now we're in a new lunation cycle. So this is a big, powerful lunation cycle ahead because, of course, it starts off with an eclipse that's pretty powerful. And it culminates into a full moon in the sign of Scorpio, the place where the moon is said to be depressed. So having a partial eclipse coming along in 2 weeks from now or so, and which is being hosted by still Mars in Cancer in the sign of its fall. So this is a very powerful lunation cycle ahead or month ahead. It's probably the biggest contender for the most powerful astrology of the year, or one of the most powerful months of the year, I would say. So yeah, don't be surprised if, there are some pretty heavy, deep things that come through this month. And looking back later, this was a month that just had a lot of those heavier things happening to it for 2023. I would not be surprised at that at all. And this is part of it. We're sort of getting into that right now, as not only have we just come through a total solar eclipse, which are, in my opinion, the most powerful kinds of eclipses to have, but not only that, but we see that here is Mercury station. You see this little S down here. Excuse me. Mercury's at 15 degrees of Taurus in 36 minutes. And this S for this particular program indicates that it is stopping in the sky. So normally, of course, it progresses through the zodiac counterclockwise. But now we're going to see Mercury begin to move backwards in zodiacal order towards Aries here. And so over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be in this Mercury retrograde period for about 24 days or so. Mercury is going to be retrograde in the sign of Taurus. It's going to go through that Mercury conjunction with the sun, that Mercury cazimi in retrograde. And it isn't until about 44 days from now that Mercury gets back to being close to Uranus here in Taurus. So that's something that we're, of course, going to take a look as time goes on and get a sense of what that is all about, that Mercury having a conjunction to Uranus. But one thing that you'll want to notice right now is maybe how does this feel right now, because that is going to be something that is revisited by Mercury later on in about 44 days from now. So a lot of powerful astrology sort of leading into the weekend and over the next couple of weeks ahead. And so we're going to take a look at today, though, the square that is now being formed between the Sun and Pluto. So Pluto, of course, is at the very beginning degrees of Aquarius. And one interesting thing about this is just that, nobody alive has experienced Pluto in the sign of Aquarius because it's such a slow moving planet, right? So, a few of us have experienced Pluto in Leo or Virgo. If you're a little bit older, like myself, you experienced it in Libra and in Scorpio. But, Pluto is so slow that in the course of one life, it's not going to go all the way around the zodiac one time for us to experience what it's like in each sign. So this is a really big time because Pluto moved into this new sign that none of us alive have ever experienced. And as planets ingress into the beginnings of signs that have reception to the sign of Aquarius, either by sextile or square or trine or opposition, we are going to get some of our first experiences about what this feels like. So in a way, I almost don't want to pretend or act like I know everything about Pluto in Aquarius because I'm like everybody else. I've never experienced it before. Some of the other things that I talk about are, with the faster traditional moving planets that we have experienced, a number of times, them going through this particular aspect with these other planets or moving into these signs. These different archetypal combinations are things that I've experienced, things that I've written down in my journal or diary. I've made note of them. I've sort of learned as I went and applied that to the book theory, as it were, so I can get kind of a sense about my own experiences as they connect to maybe some of the things that we learn in theory or in practice, right? But with Pluto and Aquarius, I don't have that experience, and nobody does. All we can really do is go back to, a couple hundred years ago when Pluto was in Aquarius, and we can sort of analyze things that were happening at that time, maybe some big events that were happening in the world, but it's still overall kind of hard to characterize what specifically was Plutonian, about those particular events. It's just kind of difficult to do that in general. So one exciting thing is that as planets move into the beginnings of signs, and we're really talking about any planet that moves into the sign of Aries, Taurus, or Gemini, and a planet that is going to move into Leo or Libra, Scorpio, or Sagittarius. Those are the signs that hold reception back to Aquarius. And so whenever we get ingresses into those particular signs, we're going to get our first taste and sense of what Pluto is representing or signifying in this new sign that he is beginning to work his transformational magic in. So that's one thing that is really interesting and requires, I think, just a little bit more of a humble approach where we can just kind of sit back and try to fill out what it is that it represents before saying, okay, it means this or that. So I do want to come from a place of humility when it comes to Pluto entering this new sign. And I don't want to say that I know exactly what it means, but there are some archetypal things that we do understand about Pluto, as far as we know, and we can sort of blend those with the traditional archetypal qualities of the sign of Aquarius, as it was traditionally ruled by Saturn. And so it is a Saturn sign, of course, that is said to be masculine or daytime ruled. It is connected to the earth element, and it's supposed to be a solid, fixed, or stabilizing sign. So it takes the change into the season of winter and stabilizes that change, makes it sort of ring out like a sustained note, as it were. So each of these solid signs one way you can think about them, because we have all these planets now in Taurus, another solid sign. So one way that you can think about solid signs is sort of, if you've ever heard a gong or like something being hit, like a gong or like a chime or something, as soon as it's struck, that initial striking, that's the initiation. Um, that is like the Aries or the Capricorn or like the Cancer or Libra. That's the initiation that leads into that particular sound that you're like first going, oh, and it sort of starts to do something. But when the sound sort of stabilizes out, gets all stable, that would be like the next sign in each of the seasons: Taurus and Leo and Scorpio and Aquarius have those sort of stabilizing resonances that bring that sound into something that is sustained. And it's sort of expansive in that way. It's the sound just carries and carries in a really even way. So those are some of the qualities that we know that Pluto will probably disrupt, is some of those sustained Saturn kinds of airy things, right? And also ways in which transformation might occur. And we know that Aquarius is opposite to the sun's temple of Leo. So Aquarius has this natural diopposing way in which it questions or rebels or goes against the central authority as represented by the sun. If the sun is sort of the center that all planets revolve around, or the king that everybody takes orders from, Aquarius would be like the people of the king, or like the kingdom itself. And so Aquarius is this very collective social kind of sign because it stands naturally in opposition to an archetype that has to do with the individual authority, right? The central authority. So this square between Pluto and the sun in Taurus is pretty interesting because you're getting this taste of Pluto in a sign that has something to do with the collective and different factions within the collective, what's popular, what's not popular. These very mental or communicative qualities, these ideological preferences that Aquarius can try to sustain and hold on to, a connection to the status quo, or a revolt from the central authority of a status quo. These are things that Aquarius wrestles with in terms of an archetypal signature, and those things are in this dominating square. Pluto is in that domination square over to the sun. So you get these very interesting solar connections here, and now the sun has a couple of differences in the sign of Taurus than it does in Aries. And that is primarily what I wanted to talk about today, was some of the differences that the sun has between Aries and Taurus, because every planet has dignity from the standpoint of ancient astrology. And so dignity is a concept that really gets at, much like it sounds, a planet having some kind of importance or a state of deserving honor, or it has some kind of reputation. And when somebody or something has dignity, that due respect that it gains gives it an easier time doing what it wants to do, right? If somebody has a high reputation, a lot of things can come easy for that person if they are successful or admired. If they have a high dignity, or and they're respected, if they go out into the world and try to make something happen, a lot of times that dignity can carry them sort of far. It gives them a kind of ability to do what they want to do without so much resistance. Whereas if somebody doesn't have good dignity, it's all the more difficult to try to make something happen for yourself. So this scheme of dignities now with the sun, of course, the sun is dignified in the sign of Leo because the sun is the domicile ruler of that sign, right? And the sun also has dignity in the sign of Aries, and that is because Aries is the beginning of the light half of the year, when light overcomes the darkness, or becomes dominant over darkness. So, and of course, a lot of people who have watched this channel or have studied ancient astrology already know once the sun passes over the vernal equinox marker here between the end of Pisces and the beginning of Aries, the sun is providing more daylight and is more dominant. So there are more hours or minutes in a day of daylight than there are nighttime or darkness in that 24-hour period. And as the sun goes across the Virgo Libra axis into the sign of Libra, that is the place where the sun was said to be fallen or depressed. So it's like anti-dignity. Not only does it not have dignity, but it's like starting down even lower than just normal. And that's because that's the time of the year where darkness overcomes light or daylight. So the sun has exalted or lifted up dignity in the sign of Aries because this is the time of the year where light overcomes dark. But I think you could take it further than that because Aries is a Mars-ruled sign. And when you think about what the sun represents archetypally, the sun being that central power or authority, that central planet that all other planets revolve around, that provides light and warmth and makes life possible and shines its, gives its light forth. It's sort of, is this, it wants to be distinguished or known for being the thing that shines and is giving its light. So the sun is very individualistic. It likes to be noticed. It likes to be seen. It likes to be the center. It likes to have its own personal autonomy and authority. It likes to do what it wants to do, right? And oftentimes, one way you can read the sun in Libra is that Libra is very concerned with what other people need or want or should, we have to consider. So that's antithetical to the nature of the sun. That's one way that we read the sun as fallen in Libra, is because how can the sun be thinking about itself if it has to think about other people so much, right? But in Aries, Mars and the sun have this sort of affinity in terms of their archetype. Mars likes to also be individual. It likes to be on its own. It likes to be the master of its destiny. It likes to go forth in courage and bravery to defend what it wants. It will defend its right to exist at all. So that's the reason why I think Aries is the beginning of the springtime, because life needs a sort of tenacity to overcome the winter and to like pull itself up out of the death and decay of winter. It sort of needs to have this really dominant, forceful sort of ability to come forth out of nowhere and survive against all odds, right? That's one quality of the sign of Aries. So the sun is exalted there. The sun is overcoming darkness, and Aries is, defending its right to survive, its right to mate again and select a mate, as it were. And sometimes, you get this image of like rams that have to butt heads for mating rights. So this very indomitable kind of quality that Aries has is really getting at something that is not self-centered. That would be the wrong way to describe it, because there's like a derogatory sense of being self-centered. But thinking about something from what is important to you as an individual, what you need to survive or to thrive as an individual, which is important. You won't survive without that. If that's out of balance, you don't survive. So that quality of the sun being exalted and lifted up in a Mars-ruled sign is very conducive, and that's one way that we read the sun being exalted in the sign of Aries. But what happens when the sun moves into the sign of Taurus? Well, Taurus is ruled by Venus, and Venus is quite different from Mars. Venus likes to harmonize people together. It likes to be that energy that can find diplomacy, or it can find a common ground. It can become friendly, and it can be graceful, socially speaking, right? It knows what to do and how to behave in such a way that there can be peace and harmony and love shared between people, So that's quite different, because the sun doesn't naturally think so much about how to be self-sacrificing in terms of thinking about other people. That's a quality that is a little bit estranged to the sun's nature. So when you get the sun moving into a Venus ruled sign, the sun has to try to be self-expressive, but through these Venusian kinds of ways. And the sun can be very friendly and it can be very honorable. But with the sun running through the sign of Venus, there is a little bit of a downgrade for what's important or the sun's ability to express its own nature. It's not a terrible place for the sun to be, but it just definitely is, going from a very high place of exaltation and power and ability to express itself to a place that it has to struggle just a little bit more because it doesn't have that dignity. Now, one thing that Venus, or one way in which Venus can be like the sun, though, is that Venus can, on more of its shadow side, you could say, Venus can have the quality of wanting something so much that it doesn't think about other people. So if Venus desires something or covets something, this is where you get like things like adultery, right? Where somebody will be so attracted to somebody else that they might not think about their marriage or their relationship, and that desire might get the better of them. So these are a little bit of Venus's more shadowy sides, and it's interesting that you could think about what makes a shadow possible. Well, it's the sun's light. So this interesting way in which the sun running through a Venus-ruled sign could potentially have something to say about Venus's shadow sides. That could be what we see when we get Pluto squaring the sun, because that square, is a difficult aspect. So how do we get this difficult Pluto square sort of representing possible things that the sun could have to deal with in the sign of Taurus, a Venus-ruled sign? Maybe things with vanity or with coveting or with a burning desire for something that we want that becomes almost irrational, we could see, of course, power struggles. There could be people coming up against our will, and it could be the will to go after something that we want very much, that we desire very much, that's very attractive or beautiful to us. And that doesn't have to be in like a relationship or somebody we're just attracted to. You can be attracted to an image of what you want your life to be. So could Pluto in square to the sun, for some people represent that that experience of maybe having like a father come and tell you, I don't think you're living your best life. Like, you might be chasing something that is not so practical, right? Pluto in a Saturn ruled sign, thinking about practicality and sort of wanting to impose or dominate a sense of what should you be doing with your life. And the sun in Venus's sign saying, well, there's this beautiful, pleasing, sensual life that I could be living, and I can't think about it too much. So could this Pluto square the sun in Venus's sign sometimes be about other people trying to change your mind or dominate what it is that you want? Now, I think that could be a possibility. This is very much a fast-moving transit, so there isn't a lot of time to experience this. So this might be a transit that for a lot of us goes by sort of unnoticed. But I think where it does get picked up on by other people could have to do with a way in which our own authority to pursue what it is that is pleasing or pleasurable or desiring to us at the moment. There could be conflict coming from other people, coming from work or family, or even within. There could be like an almost internal struggle for a couple of days as this aspect is separating out over the next 3 days or so. There could be kind of this sense of like, well, I need to change something and do something more practical. And there's this idea of what it is that makes sense, what is practical, what is responsible, what is rational. And then the sun is moving into a sign that is Venus ruled, and the sun says, well, I want to do something that pleases myself, right? I want to be with the person I want to be with the person I'm most attracted to, live the life that is most pleasing or pleasurable to me. And Pluto could be like an internal struggle saying, yeah, but is that really the most practical, pragmatic, responsible thing that you have to do? So there could be tension with that, I could say. And that could be very much related to the eclipse that happened at the end of Aries, where, the sun went through a kind of death and rebirth moment as it was eclipsed by the moon representing a new moon coming through at that time that made the eclipse was speaking to the endings of fortune or fate or circumstances that is going to be eclipsing the sun's independent, indomitable Aries kind of quality to it and preparing it to move into more of a sign that is related to harmony or love or relationship and desire. So Pluto is coming up against desire. Pluto in a communicative, airy mental sign that is very opinionated and is also very stubborn and fixed on what it believes and what it thinks. A sign that is opposite to Leo and has a connection to collective. This could also be us being maybe a person that wants something unusual that goes against the collective. Or it could be that we are the person that is in the collective that sees somebody standing out and doing things that they want to do, and it doesn't seem right to us. So these are some of the, they're not huge, they're not huge things that could potentially be coming up, but they're things that definitely might be grading below the surface a little bit over the next couple of days, over the weekend or so. Now, one thing that is also simultaneously taking place, of course, is that Mercury conjunct to Uranus. So could the things that we want, could there be something shifting around the ideas that we want? Could old friends or old lovers be coming back out of the blue, and this stirs up kind of a desire that is really causing a tension with something that is already there, stabilized, and has a rational kind of nature to it. So these are ways in which we could sort of see the energy of the weekend coming through with this Sun-Pluto square, with this Mercury in Uranus, and a new moon kicking off. And I do want to show you real quick, where is all of this potentially leading? Because this is a really big month. So let's just get a little bit prepared for the way ahead here. And as we roll the clock forward by days, the culmination of the lunation cycle is taking place right around May the 5th at the time of the full moon. And again, now let me plug in real quick here. Forgot to put Mars back in so you can see Mars, but there we go. Okay, again, we have this is all leading to what's happening right now, is all leading to, over the next couple of weeks, to this full moon, the culminative moment of the lunation cycle, right? Where things are just now beginning to sprout and take on some kind of first glimpse of being noticed. And it's all leading to this full moon energy, which is, of course, sort of the fruit of what is sprouting right now, in the short term, at least. And you see that we are walking closer and closer day by day to a culmination that is archetypally represented by the moon in the sign of Scorpio, something that deals with darkness and death, at least in the metaphorical sense, like something that is getting us or brushing us close to a kind of metaphorical death-like experience. So that's really interesting. And of course, we're going to explore that as the month goes on here. But that is something to keep in mind, that there is this very dark quality ahead. And the reason why this could be very potent, of course, is because the full moon is being in the sign of Scorpio, is being hosted by Mars. Scorpio is that Mars-ruled sign. Other than Aries, we have Aries and Scorpio that are both Mars-ruled. Very interesting that we had a new moon total solar eclipse in Mars's first ruled sign of Aries, and that we're having the culmination of the lunation cycle in the second Mars ruled sign of Scorpio. So this is a very Mars centric month. And Mars is not doing so hot in the sign of Cancer, right? Mars is traditionally said to be in his fall in the sign of Cancer. So I would expect that this is a very powerful, heavy, potent month that might have to do with things of the family, things of the home, things of that feminine, sensitive, emotional quality, so that's kind of where it's all leading. Now, going back to just today, though, we see that, some basic things to watch for, I guess, we want to wrap up with is Pluto square the sun. In the modern tradition of astrology, you're talking about power struggles or things that come to light. What is hidden or secretive about the sensual, desiring, vain, prideful, beautiful, sexual, attractive, coveting, lusting? What is potentially hidden or secretive about some of those types of things that has a chance to be revealed? That's one way that you could read this this Pluto square the sun. Of course, traditionally, we're talking about maybe power struggles with authority, maybe us battling authority, or maybe people battling against our personal authority. That's usually what the sun's square archetypal energy gets at. But specifically, I think that this is really dealing with the authority of something that is desirable, that other people want or that we want. So that's what I have for today. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I am going to return on Monday, and we're going to take a look at the Mercury retrograde cycle, because that is also a big component of the next couple of weeks as well. So thanks so much, everybody, for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And please leave in the comment section how that eclipse felt for you. I'm really curious to see and take a temperature of what that eclipse was like for people. And, we're still in the wake of that energy, especially with this Sun-Pluto square. So yeah, go ahead and leave me a comment. Let me know how you're doing out there. And I hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.